The nation's history is far more a record of imperial victory than a saga of wars waged and battles won. Its greatness lies in glowing furnaces and smoking stacks, in skilled labor, inventive genius, and the spirit of enterprise that is so typical of America. And typical of the steel industry, literally the backbone of 1,000 industries, is the panorama that reveals the magnitude of any one of the major mills where the manufacture of steel involves a tremendous investment.
In a few moments, I will sign the North American Free Trade Act into law. NAFTA will tear down trade barriers between our three nations. It will create the world's largest trade zone and create 200,000 jobs in this country.
But Senator, there's 4 letters out there, and it's a bad 4 letters in this area. It's NAFTA.
Last time I checked, NAFTA is 5 letters.
I'm going to tell our NAFTA partners that I intend to immediately renegotiate the terms of that agreement to get a better deal by a lot, not just a little, by a lot for our workers.
The campaign rhetoric tends to be, well, I should say, prior to a couple of months ago with Brexit, I would have said campaign rhetoric tends to be fairly harmless. Trade policy, it's the sort of thing that plays very well on the campaign trail, but that voters follow very little once the election is over and politicians are going about their daily business. To the extent that people are aware of trade, they feel vaguely negatively towards it. Agreements like TTIP and the Trans-Pacific Partnership have been very controversial. People feel as though we're losing jobs to foreign trade, and that we're disadvantaged by these trade deals. But then, of course, they don't really know the contents of them, right? All the trade deals are really pretty complex. I study this stuff, and I don't know everything that's in every single trade agreement everywhere. So it's not really an issue that voters actually follow, but it sounds good to say, oh, we're going to revoke these policies. I mean, the U.S. trades a lot. We have a big domestic market, so to some extent we can, we can make our own products and sell them to our own people. But at the end of the day, just about every country in the world, including the U.S., is a pretty big trader. And in order to get other countries to not discriminate against your exports, the U.S.'s exports, you often have to agree not to discriminate against theirs. That's the sort of reciprocal nature of these agreements. The U.S. is a member already of the World Trade Organization, which is a multilateral trade deal that encompasses just about every country in the world at this point. Once you're a member of the WTO, or if you're a member of a preferential trade agreement, what that means is that you can't impose taxes on goods that are coming into the country. You have to treat them the same as you would domestic goods for everybody that's a member of the agreement. The U.S. also has a handful of preferential trade agreements, including NAFTA. That's sort of the most famous one with the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. It has a couple of more with countries like South Korea and Colombia, for example, Panama. For U.S. consumers, the gains of trade agreements are very large, but they're spread across an entire population, and they're spread in terms of in the form of gains for the consumer, right? So what a trade agreement is basically going to mean is that your t-shirt is going to be 10 cents cheaper than it would have otherwise. So once you add that up across the entire population of the US, that's a lot of money, but it's not something that people feel in any kind of visceral way. If you, however, lose your job, if your factory closes, and you observe that the US is a member of an agreement that also includes China, you will feel that loss very intensely, much more intensely than the millions of consumers feel that cheaper shirt. And so that's why in election time, it's very popular to kind of cast trade agreements as these sort of bad guys, right? Does demonizing these agreements actually win votes? I mean, you'll see these agreements being demonized, particularly in swing states that are also part of the Rust Belt where these factories have been closed. So rhetorically, it's a very popular line. Actually, in 2008, John McCain, the Republican presidential candidate, and the Republicans are traditionally very pro-free trade, actually said to a small town that had gone bust, you know, well, your jobs aren't coming back.
And I have to give you some straight talk. I can't turn that around. I can't look you in the eye and tell you that I believe those jobs are coming back any more than I believe that the textile mills are coming back.
I suppose that didn't go over so well, but it had the benefit of being true. I mean, most of the economic research shows that many of the job losses in developed countries like the US have been far more to do with technological change than with trade deals. So they have more to do with more efficient ways of producing goods, not relying on human labor, than they have been with signing a trade agreement with China. Even if your factory closed just because factories have become more efficient and they don't require workers in the same way that they did 50 or 60 years ago, you can still point to that trade agreement and say, oh, you know, I know that there are factories operating in China. I'm out of a job. It must be due to this agreement, and that's bad. So any politician from the left or the right will gain a lot of sympathy by saying, oh, you know, these agreements are bad for the American worker and we have to stop them.